Bright Tuty. Every student matters.
Hello guys, welcome back to the geography lesson. So today we have the last chapter on your book for the section that is meant for geography. Now this chapter is chapter 10 and the title of this chapter is Map Reading including Drawing and Insertion. So basically this chapter is about how to read a map. Now, before we begin, I would like to briefly tell you about the map reading tasks or exercises you had in the previous chapters for the geography section. Now, every chapter at the end of it has exercises, and with every chapter, while you were with me, learning with me, we did the exercises barring or except the map reading exercises. Now, I intentionally didn't do that, thinking that that would be a small project for yourself. And I also knew that at the end of the section, there was a chapter called Map Reading, which would allow you to understand the exercises or the idea behind the exercise properly. Now, after this exercise, if you have not done the map reading exercises for earlier chapters, then what you can do is after this, you can begin all the map reading exercises on your own. Those are very easy. You just have to mark according to the question, the places, the forests or the other landscapes that we have done. So with that, let us begin this chapter. Now, what are maps? Why do we call maps maps? And what do we understand when we say maps? Is it a sketch? Is it a globe that we see? Or is it a long big sheet of a map? Or is it atlas? What is it? Now, maps are two-dimensional representation of the earth or a part of it. Okay, so maps are basically drawings. Okay, they have length and breadth. They don't have width. You can't touch it. You can't feel it. You can just see it. Okay, it has length and breadth. That's why it's called two-dimensional. And it is the exact representation or similar representation of how the earth looks like or how the landscape looks like. So the representation of the earth is called a map. So while representing, it represents a geographical area. So we say map of India. So the geographical area of India is represented on a piece of paper. Right? So these maps are drawn or printed on a flat surface. Today, if you go to the stationery shop, we see different versions of maps where you can feel it, you can rotate it, it looks like a ball, and there are different versions of it. But generally, maps are drawn on a flat surface, okay, and then they are put on different shapes and sizes of objects. Now, maps today we use it right? Every phone has a GPS, and that is basically maps, which helps us to reach from one place to another. Maps are used to study geography. Maps are used for various reasons, and it seems like maps have always been there with us. But maps have been used since the ancient times. The rulers, the people who lived thousands and thousands of years ago, they also used maps. Okay? Now, the first people to make the use of map popular, a very popular practice, were the Greeks and the Romans. Okay, they popularized the map making and its use. Okay, so now let us see the early developments of map making. Now, in the earlier period, the ancient period, maps were developed, they were drawn, and they also became part of their daily practice for navigating the sea, for going from one place to another. Alright, now let us see how that process developed. The earliest map, they were drawn on a clay tablet. Alright, so today we have different gadgets which we call tablet, iPad, Samsung tablet, and other company tablets, right? So they are these flat device where we point with our finger, we click, and then we enlarge, we do all that thing. We read, we play, we call, we do ton of other things. So tablet is the same shape, right? But this tablet was made of clay, mud, alright, and in that tablet was drawn the map, and that map was used for navigation purpose. Okay, so people drew the map on a clay tablet, not on a paper. Then paper was not discovered. Now Romans used it for the survey of land, for proper looking at or managing the land, trying to see how much land they owned, the measurement of it, what grew in it. So the Romans used the maps for the survey of the land and also for building the roads, where it goes, where the road goes, where it cuts, where it turns. Okay, so these skills were used for map drawing. First, the maps were drawn for surveying the land, building the roads. The same skill eventually came to be used for map drawings. Okay. Now the early maps were not drawn for the maps that are made for today for us. We use it for navigating, for looking at the distances, for making sure how we reach the market, how we reach the new country, how we reach the new city, right? But earlier the maps were based on astronomical determination. It was not based on direction of the wind, direction of the sun. It was not based on that. It was based on the astronomical determination. Okay. So in the medieval period, astrolabe and compass were used for finding direction and location. So the position of the moon, the position of the stars, and the compass was used for finding direction and location of certain places that they were trying to find. Alright? In the medieval period, the use of latitudes and longitudes were also made to plot information on maps. So they used longitudes and latitudes, which we see in the map today, right? That was also used for plotting the information on maps to make the maps much more readable, okay, much more understandable, easier to understand. So that was done by the people in the medieval period. So what we see of all these longitudes, latitudes, the direction, these were all done by the earlier period, by the people living in the earlier period as well. Although today it's much more advanced, it's much more easier, it's much more accessible, but earlier in the medieval period, in the ancient period, it may not have been easier to access, easier to understand, and easier to get. Alright. Now let us look at map reading. Now what is map reading? Basically it means analyzing the map, trying to understand the map, what is drawn, how it is drawn, what it signifies, what it indicates, what direction it shows. Alright, so all that analyzation of the map is called map reading. So by map reading, we interpret various symbols used in the map. In the map, there are various symbols. Some are circular like a dot, some are small cubes, some are just lines which looks like waves, some look like trees, some are of different colors, right? So all that symbols are used to interpret it in a way that it should be. So the proper studying of the map, interpreting of those symbols are called map reading. Now the symbols, colors and conventional symbols, these are the symbols that used in the map and that are help in map reading. Okay, the symbols translate some information. If it is blue in color, it means water bodies. Alright, so the symbol of the color translate into the information that it means. Alright, and the scale diminishes with the distance. So the length or the area, obviously the earth is huge. The drawing of it cannot fit exactly in the same size on a piece of paper, right? So the sketch or the map is smaller than what it actually is. So the actual scale of the map diminishes with the distance on a piece of paper when it is drawn. Okay, it only shows one side of the picture. Okay, it only shows one side, but drawn to scale and reproduces the correct delineation along with the actual latitudes and longitudes. But just because we said that it is not the exact size of the earth, the size of it is diminished, is reduced, but that doesn't mean that the scale, the measurement is wrong. That means that the map is made in such a way that their actual latitudes, longitudes are correct, that the distances are put in such a manner that the distance on the map is equal to the distance on the actual earth. Alright? So those are all part of map making, and they all make map reading easier, convenient. Now there are essential elements of the maps. Okay, there are some elements which are very important for the maps in its making and its reading. Okay, they are used in variety of fields. The maps are used in variety of fields. Okay, and because it is used in variety of fields and very important, the elements which are essential for the making of the map becomes even more important. It has to be correct, it has to be understood by everybody, not one person, not one small group, but everybody. Okay, now let us look at three essential elements of the map. Number one is the scale, the measurement. Okay, so what is the scale? Scale is the ratio between the distance measured on the map, on the piece of paper, and the distance on the surface. So the actual distance versus the actual distance on the map. The ratio between these two is the scale of the map. Okay, now this scale, or how the distance of the surface is represented on the piece of paper on a map, is of various types. There are various methods to represent the distance. Alright, number one is statement. This is one first type of the scale. Now here the scale of the map is expressed in words. Okay, let's see how. 5 kilometer on the ground is equal to 1 centimeter on the map. So the 5 kilometer actual distance is represented on the piece of paper on the map as 1 centimeter. Okay, so the scale is represented in words directly. Okay, the second one is ratio proportion method. This is the second method of using the distance on the map. Now here in the ratio proportion method, 1 unit on the map may represent several thousand units on the ground. Okay, so 1 unit on the map, it may not be 1 unit but several thousand units on the ground surface. So if the ratio, if the scale is 1:50,000, that means that 1 centimeter on the map is equal to 50,000 centimeter on the ground. Okay, so they are in proportion. The third method is called the linear scale. Now this scale is a line drawn on the map. Okay, this is a very popular method of measuring the distance on the map. Now each division on the scale, this scale has division. Alright, and each division represents a certain distance on the ground. This division represents a certain distance, and this one another, this one another. Each division, it represents a certain distance on the ground. Alright. Now this kind of method can be read under something called representative fraction, or P or RF. Okay, representative fraction. Representative fraction. Now this representative fraction is very similar to what we just did, which is ratio proportion. Now the equation of representative fraction is distance on the map divided by distance on the ground. Say for example, the distance on the map, the piece of paper, is 1 centimeter and the distance on the ground is 50,000 centimeter. Now the RF, or the representative fraction, is 1 divided by 50,000. So it can be translated into linear scale as 1 kilometer being equal to 1 lakh centimeters. Okay, now let us see. So RF here is distance on the map. This is distance on the map, and this is distance on the surface. Right? Now half kilometer, we said that distance is the linear scale, 1 kilometer being equal to 1 lakh centimeters. Right? So 1 by half kilometer, and the RF, the representative fraction, equals to 2 kilometers here. Okay, the calculation results to 2 kilometers. This means that 2 kilometers on ground is equal to 1 centimeter on the map. Alright. Now another element that is essential for map making is conventional symbols. We looked at the distance measurement. Now we'll look at the symbols. Now on a map there are a variety of features, both man-made and natural, and they are depicted with the help of symbols and topographical sheet, on the topographical sheet. So on a map you'll see there are different symbols used, and at one corner of the map you'll also find explanation for each symbol used. Okay, now these symbols are universally accepted, meaning they are used and accepted by everybody. Okay, they're used in the survey of maps of India, survey of maps of Indian states, any geographical area. And these symbols are used to avoid crowding of information on the map. If you don't use the symbol and you have to write all the information on the map, then it becomes very crowded. It becomes very confusing and you cannot read the map. So in order to avoid that, you use symbols which are universally accepted. And the design and the shape of the symbols are made in a manner that they have been mutually agreed, drawn by nations. Okay, so all the countries come together, they decide what symbols to use, how to draw them, what colors to use, and then they agree to put them on making the maps. Okay, and they hence are universally accepted. They are not just any symbols which are picked one day and put another day and removed the next day. All right. Now these symbols, they enable tourists and other people to read the map of a country and interpret it for their understanding, and also to find the locations of their destinations or the destinations they are trying to find. So here is a chart with various symbols. Okay, these are conventional symbols. There are sometimes lines or just lines with some gaps, right? These look like some lines are crossing over the other, and you can see some look like lake, some look like, there are different shapes, triangular, some look like boat, some look like houses, temples, etc. So these are all mutually agreed symbols among countries, among nations, and they're universally accepted. The third element is color. So we looked at the distance and we looked at the symbols. Now colors. Colors also are very important element of map making. They represent particular features. Now colors used on the map are of different colors. Some are yellow, red, green, etc. And they represent different physical features or different features, okay, geographical features. So for example, blue color is used to denote oceans, seas, lakes and other water bodies. Yellow color is used for indicating cultivable land on a survey map, rough land on atlas. So on a survey map, if yellow is shown, then we understand it's a cultivable land, and on atlases they indicate rough land. And white color is used to denote uncultivable land on a survey map and unvegetated land on atlas. Okay, so we also have to be little careful about how they are slightly different, or they mean something more on atlases and on the topographical sheets. So similarly, the green color is used to denote forest areas, grasslands, etc., vegetation. The red is used for settlement huts on survey maps. The cartographers made maps by hand. So initially, there were people who were called cartographers, and they made maps with their own hand. They drew it, alright? But today, people don't draw it by their hands, but they are drawn by computers. There are programs, there are softwares which help make the maps. And these computers, these machines, they make accurate maps. Okay, they have to be accurate, they have to be exact. And there are important parameters for making maps. So there are important elements, there are some important factors which have to be considered for making the maps, which are not just the representation of the earth, but they are also accurate representation. So one is scale, the other is contour. So we know the scale, right? It is the distance, the representation of the distance. And the second is contour. Okay, contour means the different heights of the landscape. That has to also be accurate. Some may be flat, plain, some may have depression, some may have height which is just like a plateau, or some may be higher like Mount Everest. So those heights need to be represented accurately with contours. Alright? And there are also dimensions or extent of the map stated in degrees and geographical coordinates. They are also drawn in such a manner that their location, the coordinates, the geographic coordinates it's called, it's all represented in degrees. They are also accurately represented. Okay. And another important parameter is direction. It has to be made in such a manner that they are in the exact direction that they are located. For example, is it in the east? Is it in the south? Is it in the north? Alright, so all that directions are also very important for the map making. There are four main types of directions: north, south and west, east. So these are two sets, one set, two set. Okay, they are two sets of opposite directions, north, south. One set which is opposite to another. East, west, another set which is opposite to one another. These four directions, north, south, east, west, they are called cardinal directions, very important directions. But apart from these four directions, there are other sub-directions as well. What are they? They are northwest, northeast, southeast, southwest. These are called subdirections. These directions are measured clockwise with north as 0 degree and east as 90 degrees. So if, for example, this is a map of the world, right? So north, south, east, west. So the reading of the direction, it always goes into clockwise direction. The movement, how the clock moves. Okay, so there are two movements, one is or two directions, one is clockwise and the other is anti-clockwise. When we say clockwise, that means towards the right. Alright, so it starts with 0 degree here and then 90 degree. Okay, now the north-south intersects east-west line at 90 degree. So the line north-south intersects, it meets at 90 degrees. This is the 90 degree. Alright, they intersect. Now angle measured from some given point is known as bearing. The angle which is measured from any given point, be it here in this northwest direction, southwest direction, this is called bearing. Okay. Now the next is magnetic declination. What is magnetic declination? So voyagers on the sea have to be very precise about the directions. Map is used by the people who work on the sea or have to travel in the sea for many long days, right? And for them, the map has to be precise. Okay, the map reading has to be accurate. All right, the directions have to be correct. So they measure the direction in which they must go, or the direction in which that they are going. They measure those directions with the help of degrees, the degrees that we just learned. Alright. The north direction shown by the compass. Now there is something called compass which helps us understand the direction, which side is north or which is south. Okay, once we know north, we know where south is, and then we know where east and west is. So the north direction shown by the compass needle points to geographic north, the north that we use in geography, as it coincides with the axis. Alright, so there is an axis. This is an axis. The earth has an axis in which it rotates. Right? This is an axis. Now when we learn about, when we put the map normally, we just put north, south, east, west. But the compass, for compass, this is the north. This is the south. Alright, so it is slanted. Alright, so what we can understand is the north which is shown by the compass is different than what we understand north as. Alright. So the compass needle aligns itself with the magnetic north and differs with distance from the equator. The relationship between the magnetic north and the true north varies from sheet to sheet. So you see, the magnetic north which the compass shows and which aligns with the axis of the map of the earth, that is different from the north, the true north that we understand. Okay, so it varies. The north, the direction of north varies from sheet to sheet, and that has to be also understood in order to proper map reading. The angular deviation between the two directions is called the angle of declination. Okay, so the angular deviation. Okay, the deviation, the difference between the two directions, the difference between the actual north and the magnetic north, that difference is called the angle of declination. All right. Now the next is importance of map. Why is map important? Why are we learning about map reading? Why do we have to locate certain areas, certain physical features on the map? Why are you tested on it, right? Now maps are very essential. They are essential for locating places on earth. They are indispensable for disaster management. If there is some disaster that has taken place in certain area, then we can see on the map where it's located, where such disaster has taken place. Then also its management can be taken place by locating, by understanding its location. Okay. With maps, we can also locate resources which are very important for our development, which are very important for our growth. Maps are very essential aid for the tourists. If you are going, say for example, you're traveling to Paris, France. Now you don't know France, you have never been to France or Europe. So what do? First, you check out the map. You try to see where your hotel is located, where you'll be staying, the nearby area, where the shops are. So all that is provided, all that information you get through a map. And what is it doing? It is helping you in your travel. It is helping you in your stay. Maps also help us to measure distances and geographic differences like climate, weather, etc. So maps also helps us understand the distance between places, say for example, distance between Washington DC to New Delhi in India. And it also helps us understand the differences in climatic conditions at various places on earth. It also helps us understand the different weather conditions within our country, outside our country, in the rest of the world, etc. Now, it also helps us understand the direction of rivers, the direction of wind, the direction of traffic, air traffic, land traffic, sea traffic, and the movements of people, the movements of all these rivers, wind, traffic, etc. Alright, this is all information that the map provides us. Alright, so maps also provide us essential management tool. It helps us analyze, study, synthesize a variety of different forms of information. So with the map, we not only see how the earth is represented on a piece of paper, but we also understand different things about weather, about climate, about traffic, about distances, about location, right? So all that can be analyzed and synthesized, and that may lead to proper management of lives on earth. Okay, so this is why maps are very important, and map reading is also equally important.